Hi, welcome to today's show. We're going to talk about productivity versus activity. We are going to talk about leverage and what even leverage means, with a business and how to apply it. So let's get started. And I remember a story I heard. I'll tell you that story first, and you understand it better. So I remember I heard about how there was this guy who was always going into the library, and what happened in the end was that he failed when the finals came or when the exams came. So his friend was two friends were talking and they were like, wait, that guy was always in the library. Like, what happened? How come he didn't pass the exam? And the other friend said something that's interesting. He said, like, we're talking about productivity, not traffic, and and that is something that I found very very interesting. And I see it a lot with regards to entrepreneurs. I see it a lot with regards to business and these kind of entrepreneurial activities where you find someone who is bragging about how they have a business and they're always staying up, and all these memes about how the entrepreneur is the one who's burning the midnight oil and stuff like that. And the problem with that is that it's almost the same as saying that um just because you run in a race, that means that you're going to win, or just because you've been doing something long enough, it's the same as having results. And it reminds me of a friend was telling me a story about this guy who got hired, and the guy was always early in, and the last person out of the business and so on. And so when it came to time for review, they asked him, hey, you know, what have you been up to? What have you produced for the company? What has been your value over the last 3 months or whatever? And he was like, oh, I'm like always the first, and I'm always the last person who to leave. And his manager was like, yeah, we know that, but like, what have you produced for the company? And he was like, yeah, like I'm always the first in and the last to leave. The manager was like, that has nothing to do with it, you know, like nobody cares how. I mean, maybe apart from people who don't really understand what productivity is, nobody cares how much activity or how much traffic if you are not converting that traffic into something useful. It's it's kind of like how you meet an entrepreneur and the person tells you that, oh, I've been operating this business for the last 11 years, and the person doesn't even own 1% of their like market. So then what's the point? The person hasn't hit any of the substantial goals that or metrics that define the kind of business that they run. So like there's no point. It's literally exactly like the person who goes to the gym every day and doesn't see any results. It's not being in the gym that makes you fit. It's actually doing the work and doing the work, in a wise way. So that's how that's the mindset to think about when it comes to the difference between productivity and activity. It's You can have 5 products, you can have 10 products, you can have 100 products, but if somebody has one product and a person is beating you at your same goals, your same metrics, then then you failed. And not in the failure sense that Silicon Valley likes to promote about how failure is good and stuff like that. Like that I don't know where that came from, but I get what they're trying to say anyway. But it's yeah. So it's important to know that what I'm doing is this activity or this productivity. Am I actually getting results, or am I just doing stuff? So let's talk a little bit about leverage. And leverage is a way to get exponential results without doing things in a linear fashion. So it's how to get results without adding one plus one to become two. It's multiplying one times two or one times three to get greater results. And I'll give you some examples. But in your business, think about it this way, right? It costs the same, exactly the same, for you to acquire a customer either through an ad, either through some sales, some brochures, some direct mail, whatever it is. It literally costs the same to do that, to get someone who's going to buy once and never buy again, or someone who's going to buy 3 times a year, or someone who's going to buy once every month or once every week. The cost of getting the person is the same, right? It's the same as even when it comes to hiring people. Many times, it will probably cost you very close to the same amount to hire, someone who will give you, you know, exponential growth in your business versus someone who is going to give you like mega growth. It's not the same for every business, but many businesses, if they would just look more at the person's productivity over the person's, resume, they would hire the right person most of the time. And it's important to think about it that when you're even making a sale, you should ask yourself that, um how else could I make more by doing the same activity? One of the things that has bothered me for years and has made me really studious and so on is that there are people who are working literally 40 to 60 hours a week, right? And they are working for money. It's different if they are not working for money. They are working so that they can get paid. They are working so that they can have more money. And all they leave with at the end of the month is 1,000, 500, 2,000, 3,000, let's say even $5,000, and then at the end of the month, right? But then there are also people who are who have the same 24 hours in a day, who probably even work in the same industry, and even that industry doesn't matter. But that same $5,000, they're making that same $5,000 in a day. And I've never understood why I shouldn't be the person who is producing more, or creating more value, or receiving more value in a day than than the person I was yesterday. And it's really important to consider that am I really using all my resources well? And this actually reminds me of a friend that I have, a really close friend. And when I met him, he was probably earning. I mean, he was probably raking in. It's just about $10,000 a month, right? It is a one-man business. He has no employees or anything like that. I think he has like some virtual assistants that help him sometimes, but this is literally a one-man business. And he works, mainly online. But his costs in terms of like internet connection, laptop, all of those things are not more than $1,000, right? And yet this person produces 5 times more, more than 5 times, really, more than most people I know who have the same setup that he has. And there are people who wake up in the morning, they'll go to work, 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, come home, and they can work for 5 years, 10 years, and they'll never see the equivalent of $10,000 in a month. Not because they don't want it. There's a difference between those who say they don't want it and so on and so on. I'm talking about those who actually want it. Those who are working for the raises and so on. And I thought about it that how do two people have a laptop, a $500, $1,000, $2,000 laptop, and one person is using that laptop to produce, infinitely more value than the other person. So when you think about leverage that way, what's going to happen is that you're always going to think about how can I maximize what I'm doing currently. How do I maximize what I'm doing currently? I'll share another example. There's this quote by I think it was by Archimedes about how if you give me a liver long enough and a place to stand, I'll move the world. And it's a quote that I like because he didn't if I mean if it's whether it's apocryphal or not, he didn't say that he was going to use hands to move the world, because it's not effort alone that pays. If you can get the leverage, you're good. And there's a story I read about I think it was Jay Gould and Rockefeller, and it talked about how I think Jay Gould wanted to raise what it was like $20 million or something like that, and he went to Rockefeller to raise the money, and and Rockefeller told him that, you know what, I'm not going to give you the money, but if I walk with you across the trading floor of the New York Stock Exchange or whatever stock exchange they were at the time, trust me, within a short period of time, everybody will want to give you money. So what they literally did was that, according to the story, they walked hand in hand, or Rockefeller had his hand around his shoulder, and they walked across the stock exchange. From that day, it was never difficult for Jay Gould, or I think it was Jay Gould who was in the story, but I may be wrong. It was never difficult for him to raise money. Why? Because he leveraged on Rockefeller's reputation. And so it's important to know that, like, how can I use leverage that is someone else's leverage, or leverage that I haven't before today, like, considered. Because leverage comes in all different kinds and shapes. You can sometimes use somebody's warehouse, other people's money, um, other people's clouds, so on and so forth. It's what happens with celebrity endorsements, where a celebrity has garnered a reputation and a brand and influence in the market, and then someone else leverages on that celebrity and sells millions and millions of dollars worth of products. It's important to know, maybe you're even the one who has the leverage, but you can offer the leverage to someone else and make money off it. So if you have thousands of people on your list, you can get somebody else's product and leverage that and sell to your list. And those kind of things are some examples of leverage to think about. And the way to practice this leverage is to always determine what the end result will be before you begin. Because if you know that what you seek is, let's say, $100,000 in sales within the next week, you can either try to sell your products, individually one by one, or you can find someone who already has the leverage, somebody who already has, let's say, 50,000 people walking through their store, every week, and then leverage off of that traffic to sell your products. And I mean, if those 50,000 people make up most of your market, you should be able to sell $100,000 worth of products in no time. And the second thing is to look for things that will amplify your results, such as other people's resources and so on. So it's almost kind of like the first one, but it's important to know it beforehand that this is what I want, and these are the sources of leverage that I have. One seemingly random form of leverage is, for example, if you're the vice president of a company, let's say an established corporation, you can easily switch, leave your company and go and work for a company that's less well known and probably become CEO. Just because in another company you were in a bigger company you were VP, so in a smaller company they to make you VP would be a step down. So the only reasonable thing would be to give you a promotion. So those are some examples of leverage. And if you have any examples that you've used and you found particularly useful, shoot me an email at jeff@growing startup.com. If you want more tips on marketing, advertising, and psychological fundamentals of business, check out the website growing startup.com, and I'll be sharing more as the days go by. Thank you for listening.